If you were to take a file to a commercial printer, it's quite likely that this setup is all that you would need to do. You would fill the entire area with your graphics and keep all of your important text inside that safe text line. However, if this was an item that you were going to print out personally, it would be better to set it up a step further so that it's ready to trim. So I'll show you how to do that in this tutorial. First thing, we need to mark the outside edge of the bleed line. And just a reminder, the area on the outside of the trim is called the bleed. So I'm going to bring another guideline in on all four sides and just place it right at the edge of my canvas. And then I need to change my canvas size to the nearest standard paper size. So if I come up here to edit, nope, it's an image, canvas size, and make sure I have relative unchecked, this is where I can change the size of the canvas without affecting the size of the image. The closest paper size to the measurements I have here is tabloid, which is 11 inches wide by 17 inches tall. So I'm going to enter that in, 11 by 17 inches, and click OK. So now we have our entire paper area, and what we need to do is set up the marks where you will trim your graphic. So for convenience of this tutorial, I'm going to just fill in the area that would need to be printed full of color. So I'm going to make a selection that goes clear out to the outside edge of the bleed, and I'll make a new layer and fill it with some color and deselect. And then I'm going to zoom in on this top right corner and deal with this one first. Create a new layer and call this one either tick marks or trim marks. They're both the same thing. And then switch your color so that you have default black in front by clicking on the little color boxes here or pushing the letter D as in David. Grab your paintbrush, hold it down, and then choose the pencil tool. Now we choose the pencil tool because it doesn't have any fuzzy lines. Then right click and enter in 2 pixels. So this is about the width you need. You can honestly go 3 pixels if you'd like, but 2 pixels does the trick. I'm going to line my brush up over this trim line, which is the one in the middle, and click just outside of my graphic area, hold shift, and drag upwards to, I don't know, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a tiny bit longer. And then I'm going to do the same on this side and hold shift and pull it over. To hide your guidelines, hit Command semicolon, and now you can see these trim marks. So when I pull out my ruler and my razor blade, I'll have these trim marks on each corner, and I can line my ruler up with the trim marks to cut through. The other place I need a trim mark is on the bottom corner, and so I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. Now if you want them to be super tidy and exactly the same size, you can create one set and then copy that layer around your canvas, and then they will all be exactly the same size. There's any number of ways you can actually make them the same size. Okay, zooming out, I'm going to hide my guidelines again so we can see those lines. Okay, when you print, you do need to turn all your template items off. So if I have a template layer that shows where the fold and the safe is and maybe outside measurements, I need to turn that off before printing, but then I'm left with a problem. Where do I fold on this item? Well, you can add a couple more marks to show where to fold. Let's pull those guidelines back up by hitting Command semicolon again, and I'm going to actually change the color of my tick marks just so I know that those are not ones that I want to cut on. And I will put a fold tick mark that's a slightly different color in the middle of that fold guide right there. And you want to put these on both sides. Okay, turn off the guidelines again so we can take a look. So here we've got it. It indicates where our trim marks are and also where the fold marks are. So let me talk you through how, once you print this out, you would actually cut and trim it down. First off, you're going to need a ruler, and I would recommend a ruler with a metal edge, and you will need a razor to cut with. Now you can get something like an X-Acto knife. My preference is using the little utility knives that are you can flip the handle up and break off sections of the blade to get a fresh blade. Those are my preference to use. And you're going to do a couple things here. First, we're going to score anywhere that there needs to be a fold. So you would take your ruler and line it up with those two lines, and with an object like perhaps a toothpick or something that is a little bit dull and won't leave a mark but will crease the paper a little bit, run it from one side to the other, and then do the same with your second fold marks. Believe me, you'll appreciate the fact that you did this later. Next, take your ruler, line it up with the first set of trim marks, and by the way, just a hint, if you put your razor down on the first tick mark and then butt your ruler up against it and then line it up down here, you're going to spend a lot less time fiddling trying to get both of those edges to line up perfectly. Take your razor and cut from about halfway through this tick mark over to halfway through the other tick mark. Don't cut all the way through the paper, because if you slice off the whole top end of this paper, you won't have any tick marks to use as a guideline. So I would do that then all the way around my object. I'll increase my ruler size here. So line it up and trim, line it up and trim, and make sure that you are using a really nice, sharp, fresh razor blade, because if you drag and tear these edges at all, they're not going to look great. And when you're done trimming, it should just fall right out and be creased so you know where to fold and be perfect, ready to go. So just a final word on printing. Once you have your entire graphic set up inside of this area and the entire bleed area filled, you need to make sure your template items are turned off to print. So tick marks should be on, template items should be off, and you need to create a print file that you will be taking to the printer. The printers that I've talked to recently prefer to have a high quality PDF file, because a PDF can mostly be universally opened and is guaranteed to not be too big of a, or usually isn't too big of a file. So to save your print file, you would go to File, Save As, change the format to Photoshop PDF, uncheck layers and click Save. Now get a little warning box that the settings that you pick next might override what we just did, so click OK. Set your preset to high quality print. And if you want to know what's going on with that, you can actually tab down through here and take a look that there is not a lot of downsampling going on. We're going to be at 300 dpi. Image quality is set at maximum, and you can go on down through here if you feel like it. But under the general settings, once you've changed that to high quality print, uncheck Preserve Photoshop Editing Capabilities. Reason being, if you leave that on when your PDF is opened in Photoshop, it will still have all of your separate layers. Now, sometimes this might be desirable, but it's not when printing, because if that is the case, there might be a mistake made at the printer where a layer gets moved or a font gets changed, and that's not what you want. You want it to print out exactly the way you saw it in the screen. So uncheck Preserve Photoshop Editing Capabilities, and then say Save PDF. Once you're completely done, I highly recommend saving your layered file in a backup place, as well as saving your PDF print and your template. And that's how you go about making a trimmable template.